Got it.
All right. So I'm here with Bern Risley, who I met on LinkedIn. I actually had posted, I believe it was my interview with Christy, like I'm some big interview. I did a podcast with Christy Faltero, and you were just like, we're like, boom, with some comments. And then I looked at your background, and I really liked how you had made a transition from being a heavy hitter in sales, like heavy President's Club, all that fun stuff, right?
Mm.
Um, which we don't have to get into President's Club and what happens down there. But from what I've heard, it's a lot of strategic planning. But I just, when we started talking, because I was like, hey, I'm always looking for podcast guests that aren't in my network. I laugh because I'm like, I swear to God, if people hear me talking with another person from Endeca or Oracle, they'll be like, hey, how about that time we did X? People are just going to just never listen, right? But it's just great to talk with people who have these different perspectives. I love to be proven wrong and all these other things. So, and I just said, hey, what would you like to talk about? Right. So today, Bern's going to talk to us about basically using, I'll say, the good sales tactics to be a better CSM. Right. So welcome. Thanks for coming on board.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
Thanks for
Love
having
it.
it. And just a note, we did a little pre-game, we did a pre-meeting like 2 weeks ago, and I should have recorded that because we got really into it. But I took some notes, and you've got two people that can talk a lot, so we're going to try and keep this on track here. But let's talk about just, we're not doing the whole autobiographical thing, but just give a couple quick hit points on your sales background
Yeah.
and some of the things and then we'll get to taking some of those learnings and apply it to CS. You're
Yeah,
also a big
sure.
CS leader as well too. So I'm just for everybody listening, like she has done this. This is not like a theory.
An illusion.
Yeah.
Now, so I've been in sales for a very long time, but I started in tech SaaS sales in the late 90s,
Yep.
right after the Telecom Act of 1996. And there was a solution for the industry called telecom expense management. So it was a long run. So,
Yep.
and kind of stayed in that industry for some time.
It was a monopoly, so why wouldn't you, right?
And funny enough, I'm surprised it still is out there. So good for them. And then, it just became apparent that, tech and SaaS, technology sales and, getting into that SaaS industry was really where the market, was heading towards. And a big change happened when I got into IBM, and we can talk into that. But as far as my sales background, yes, I kind of went after the elephants. I kind of landed them. I had a great territory: New York City Metro, Westchester, Long Island,
a good patch, as they say in salespeople terms.
Yeah. I mean, people probably would have paid $1 million for my patch. So, it was a lot of fun. It was good.
That's
times.
awesome. That's awesome. And so talk about how you, and remind me, because I love the story, how you sort of transitioned from sales. You're trying some new stuff out. Sales can be pretty good burnout and everything. So as you started evolve, I think it's proper to say you kind of evolved into the sort of CS, because CS wasn't even really a thing at the time.
Yeah, no, it wasn't really a thing at all. And there were just some things within IBM where IBM was trying to figure stuff out. I think over a course of maybe a quarter, they had scooped up about 25 different SaaS companies.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like a big placemat. You'd look down and see all the things that
Yeah. I mean, they had all kinds of stuff that,
everything.
that cleans your, living room or something, whatever. I mean, they had all kinds of different.
And the Weather Channel.
Yes.
Makes so much sense.
I know. I was amazed, but I just got very curious. And so I sort of, found my way outside of, my little silo, because we were purchased by IBM. That's how we became IBMers, and went into kind of mainstream and got very familiar with some folks that were building a brand new team called, the Cloud Academy, Cloud Team, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And I became part of that. I showed them some of the things that I did from a metric standpoint, and they were interested in what I was doing. And we they kind of brought me into that kind of family, and I started to do a lot of presentations and got connected with how they wanted to roll this out, and started to mentor and
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 was IBM? Oh, sorry, you were about to say something. I just jumped right over
yeah,
you. Was IBM still doing on premise, or had they started moving into SaaS at this point in time?
so they still had a huge on-premise
Yeah.
business. Yeah. So I mean, this part where they sort of bought all these SaaS companies um, was a way for them to to be competitive, or to understand
Got it.
how they needed to move to cloud.
Yep.
And when all that happened, they had to obviously change a lot of other things, revenue models,
Yeah.
people model, things like that. And so for people who are familiar with IBM, everybody had like some acronym that was their title. So it was SCL and CE
Oh,
and things
that's
like
right.
that. And so the lower level was considered a CE, which is a client executive.
Okay.
And one day, it was Ginny Rometty's team woke up and said, hey, if you're a CE, you're not that anymore. You're going to be a customer success manager. And there was a lot of ambiguity on what that meant and what their new job was. And so what I was able to do is get familiar with how these people could be trained up in understanding what that post sale looks like in a SaaS world.
Yeah.
And I did that, created a global mentorship program with directors and managers, and filtered that down to the folks that really needed that help.
Awesome. Oh, well, thanks for the background. I appreciate it. So when we were chatting, we really got into like using sales tactics. And when I say tactics, I don't mean like the sneaky stuff either, right? Like it's not.
Well, we can talk about that if you want.
Well, today's the 29th. Here's a discount. And but you got to sign by the 30th, or the price goes up.
Right.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
actually just heard that.
exactly. Yeah.
Just literally heard that about 2 hours ago. But we're talking about really just approaching it almost like with a different business lens, right? I could very much throw a generalized statement out there that CS people, they don't like to think in these types of business terms. I always say they're huggers. They don't want to put the business relationship in front of people. Now, a lot of people are. They're really reacting like, oh my God, I got to kind of watch revenue and things like that. So let's get into some of these sales like best practices and how to apply those to CS. I think the first item we talked about for a really long time was on forecasting.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, let me just go a little quick story back on the
Sure.
IBM. So when I transitioned and I was reporting to, say, the account management side of the house, the one thing that my boss used to say to me is like, Bern, you're going to have to get rid of the sales hat. Like, why? And apparently, if you're a salesperson, it's almost impossible. I mean, for me anyway. I mean, I'm a salesperson at my nature is to make sure that we have this relationship. I can still sell you more. So that's just the way I am.
Yep.
But as much as he said that, and as little as we all knew about customer success, that's exactly what customer success needs.
Oh, how dare you? How dare you?
It does need a little sales hat in the process.
Oh, absolutely.
So if you talk about best practices, really truly understanding what that sales process is, not from the initial sale, but what the job is of the customer success manager and how they strategically can fulfill that out,
Yeah.
So, and not to get all mixed up here, but why not? To do the reverse. It's not happening today. And it needs to happen where the sales team understands this incredible amount of data that they can access from their customer success manager to help them sell better to their customers, to help them sell more of a story and not more of, land. They need to sell the story. And so as a best practice, would I shy away from not hiring someone because they don't have a sales background? Absolutely not.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not someone that I need to go land the elephants like, City
Right.
of New York and JP Morgan Chase. No, I need someone to recognize, the points at which a customer will be able to expand and buy more.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much what it is.
Yeah. And one of the things we talked about, because when we're getting into forecasting, and some of the things I came away is I see a lot of people like, okay, Q4 starts. Oh my God, let's see, to work backwards, December, November, October, right? So I'm going to focus on my October customers in October, right? But the sales, right, is not like that. You kind of view things out on a multi-quarter sort of lens, right?
Mm-hmm. So that really does segue very nicely, because we just talked about customer success managers understanding or recognizing when a customer needs to expand, or when they should expand, or when they are going to expand, right? And so I taught every team that I led how to forecast. And what I mean by that is, if I'm at the beginning of Q1,
Yeah.
right? My team should be able to tell me in that quarter. So there's prior work to be done, but in the quarter, Bern, here are the companies that are going to be expanding. Here's the revenue attached to that expansion. Here's the opportunity, and here are the ones that are at risk. So it's a readout.
Yeah.
Telling me how my revenue is going to grow in this quarter and what I need to look out for, so maybe I can mitigate any risk. But that tells you a couple of things. It tells you, number one, my CSMs are digging deeper. They have to, because they have to report to me and tell me what these customers are doing, right? So they're going to dig deeper. They're going to know more. They're going to know more what the customer is doing. And number two, they're going to be able to understand the importance of forecasting when it comes to the idea of how their business will grow. So this is a silly example, but it's one that I did with my team. So if I have someone who likes to come into work when we were in the business of going to an office, and likes, the lashes and all that fun stuff, including myself. Okay. Okay. I would say, hey, you just opened up an amazing lash studio. I just gave you the money to do that. So I'm going to come and visit you once a quarter, and I want you to give me a readout on how your business is doing, what customers are recurring, which ones are coming back, which ones are one and done, and why. How are you building the business? So you're in charge. And, I'm here to support where you need help. So that's pretty much, it kind of puts them back in a seat where they feel comfortable. Oh, wow, I have a business I can run.
Yeah.
I got to
versus say, like, I don't know what I'm like, every day I'm just trying to figure out what to do. I'm going from fire to fire or phone call to phone call without a strategy. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, it does take a certain level of, let's call it strategy maturity, maybe.
Yeah.
Understanding a lot of, what you've done in the past. I don't think I think strategy grows as you mature in the business, and being able to recognize some of those things that you haven't in the past and catching them early.
So that's a good transition, because we talked about the strategy aspect of stuff, but then there's the execution of it.
Yay.
Right? So classic Northeastern, like, let's talk about getting it done, right?
Let's talk about getting it done. Oh my goodness. So, you talk about a whiteboard, and there was this one company where we had a fishbowl, and it was like the biggest conference room, and it was a huge fishbowl, and the whiteboard went from one end to the other, and it was basically, how it was going to be designed out as the customer journey. That stayed on there for like 3 years. Nobody could ever erase that customer journey, because God forbid, we didn't know what to do next. That's really, it's partially a joke, but primarily it's true. You know what it is? You can have tools in place. You can have great CSMs, right? A playbook, a strategy, whatever it is, you have to really teach your team what execution means and why it's so important.
Yep.
So when you have onboarding, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's probably the most important area where execution, is needed and required based on maybe the customer's timelines, based on timelines where resources are available for that customer versus, coming on down the line. Like how many times, right, have you seen where a customer's not onboarded for 6 weeks? Why? Oh, well, we don't have anybody on board then. We don't have anybody on implementation. We're all backed up.
Yeah.
Right. So it's it really gets to be very tricky. I think what I would want to hear if I were interviewing someone, knowing that they're not just a transactional kind of person, is to really understand a story on how they actually executed and created an impact, both for the business and for the customer. So how did that work? And why was it so important? How do you carry that out in your everyday, portfolio?
Yeah. Yeah. Just that's the actually understanding what the customer is trying to do, and then be able to map back what your technology does to allow them to do it. And then to keep telling them that too, right? Like, it's not just like, oh, okay, great, we turn that on, that's good. It's like, hey, remember that thing we talked about 2 months ago? Here's a report on how you guys are doing with that now. Like, oh, great.
Exactly.
And don't wait for your 3-month QBR to do that. Send a Loom, send something fast over. Yeah, that's a different subject for a different day and things like that.
Oh. Well, I mean, just one quick thing. I mean, obviously, we all know QBR, took a hit. I mean,
but
here's what I say. Here's where I believe.
I'm still a fan of them, as in like something. Yeah,
I'm a fan where it
sense.
lives very comfortably in a certain area, and I think where it lives comfortably is when you have several products. Right. And you have a company that has, many different types of products and, maybe different people who are managing that. You might I know there are some very large tech companies out there that have a ton of products, and for each product you have a CSM.
Yeah.
So to come together once a quarter and, very elegantly present everything in the picture of the people that need to see it at that level. Absolutely. 100%. When you have, a product, and I'm not saying this needs to be dumbed down in any way, but when you need to do something like that, I always look at what did they originally want to accomplish, right? So what were those core objectives? Did we go off track? So if I'm going to do something on a quarterly basis, or if I'm going to do something right after onboarding, I'm going to go back to, hey, let's just do a review of those original objectives. Let's take a look. Oh, and by the way, and you and I both know, Jeff, that almost on a quarterly basis, as the companies that we've worked for or the companies that we work for now, they change.
Yeah.
So
100%.
The objectives are changing, right? The revenue model, everything changes. And so you want to be in a position where the people that you are working, your customer, you want to make sure that you have that transparency, and they're telling, oh, by the way, we do have this new use case and we wanted to talk to you about it, but I want to bring it on. Let's go. Let's figure it out. It's so important to really make sure that you're taking the customer back to that original core objective.
Right.
Because that's where their success starts. You can grow it, but you have to know where it started. And you have to make sure that the product journey and all your feedback loops are going back to the technical teams as well.
Yep, absolutely. By the way, all CSMs who are listening, take note. Notice how Bern used my name when she was reporting back to me. Classic sales tactic right there. And you were in full salesperson mode there for a second. You're like, hey, let's take it back a little bit, right?
Let's just take it back.
That's awesome. You're right. You can't wash that sales out of you. Anything else on? We talked for so long about risk and adoption and renewal and protection. What are we missing here? Especially when, churn's a big problem these days. Um, there's the prevention, but then there's just the like knowing about it early enough so you can do something about it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things that I've done with the teams, and also coming into a brand new company as a leader, is most of the time when a company realizes that they need customer success, it's usually a little
Too late. Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
And so there's already a churn problem.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you own it, to some degree.
Yep.
So in one of the companies that I worked for, what we did is we looked 3 quarters out.
Mm-hmm.
And you look, so for example, we're in November, right? So
you're doing your Q2 work, right? You're doing your Q2 for 2023.
So say beginning of Q3, whatever is expiring in the beginning of Q3 2023, and work your way back. So you have a better opportunity of mitigating risk for companies that aren't expiring right away. Yeah. Now, I'm not saying
just reach out to them now. Exactly.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's the whole thing. Reach out to them now.
Yeah.
Right. Figure out what the process is, if there's any risk involved. And then the ones that you have, within the month, within the quarter, those are the ones that you're just going to have to jump through hoops and do all those things that we all know about, give away the
your
farm.
Execs involved, make a little flight, maybe get some Chick-fil-A in the airport.
Chick-fil-A, whatever it takes, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, but I mean, it's and if you follow the process, it actually does work. I mean, I've seen a lot of, percentage of points go down based on using that kind of a methodology.
Yeah, and that's that forecasting that I just don't see. I normally see CS leaders treating it on the quarter, right?
Yeah.
But if you're doing your book of business correct, it's kind of like in the sales strategy, it should be so natural, the renewal conversation, because you've kept it in touch with them. However you are broadcasting value, whether it's a QBR or whatever, I don't think we should take them away. We just need to make them better, right? So, but people just keep getting surprised. I've seen customers that go in pitching a big upgrade and they get churned, and they're like, "What happened there?" Like you don't know your customer. There's no KYC going on at all. So yeah.
And that's the whole thing. I mean, like, we talked about earlier, putting the CSM, having them adopt the accountability that's required, right, to manage a book of business. Now, there's lots of things that fall into that same bucket that don't make it easy. And what I mean by that is, they might have 40 accounts. A little hard. Yeah. There may not be a digital motion at this, so a lot of the churn might be with some of the smaller customers, which, in some large companies could be $1 million or more, right? With smaller customers. So you have to kind of weigh out what is going to work for you. But I do believe that as a CSM, you need to know, you need to be able to have that transparency, gain a customer's trust, and find out too that when you do or you don't get the ability to meet others, like, oh, so Jeff, could you, introduce me to so-and-so? Because what I'd really like to do is tell them what a great job you're doing. Why don't you bring them to the next call? Yeah. I mean, it's got to be about them. And you have to understand, it's all about the behavior. And when you have behavior that is not suiting you, it's still not about you, but you have to figure out a way to get around it.
Yeah, no, and that can be the hardest part. It's I just got off a couple of those today, and they can just be hard, right? If somebody wants to,
are you sure it wasn't about you, Jeff?
It's all. I'm sure I did something wrong. Don't get, but like,
no.
was helping out one of my customers on sort of setting up a meeting with a very tough client and coming in and reporting to them like, look at all this new sales. You guys are generating a lot of business through our platform and everything. and thought we was going to be all, unicorns and rainbows during the meeting by starting it off positive like this. And then it just turned out to be like, we can't stand using any of your reporting. And like, the types of things when you're slacking each other being like, we should have invited product to this call, so like, and it just happens. Right. And so,
there's your feedback loop too.
Yeah.
I mean, that's so important. And that really, like, it's funny. I want to say CSMs, that definition should be so crisp, but I'm getting away from believing a CSM is the conductor, or the CSM is the quarterback. I don't believe that anymore. You know why?
Oh, tell me more. This isn't, okay. This is off road. I love this. Yeah.
If you think about a SaaS company, there comes a time, and you've seen like the bow tie model, right? So when they reach a certain amount of revenue, you got to really start servicing and paying attention to, the existing revenue and all that fun stuff. Think about it like a nervous system. Your nervous system touches every single organ in your body, right? Your nervous system, your nervous system sends messages to every single organ in your body, right? So a CSM may execute on something, product executes on something,
right.
A technical engineer, and we're all connected. So whatever the technical engineer does is going to affect the CSM. Mm-hmm. What product does or doesn't do is going to affect the CSM, the company, the customer. It's all connected. So that's kind of how it needs to work. I mean, that's why, you and I are talking about like the sales and CSM, they need to kind of like understand how both sides sell. We need to understand what happens when product decides not to do a feature.
Or they release a feature that breaks.
Impact? Right. Or a feature that breaks
something.
What's that impact? And how does it roll down? How does it affect the company? How does it?
So I'll tell you, it's a bad day for the CSM. I don't mean to laugh.
CSM is customer facing, sales is customer facing. We all get that. But you know what? The technical people, like products, people who roll under the CTO or the CIO, they need to see that part of the business. And that's something that I think is just starting.
Yeah, it's exactly like I'm always trying to pull product people onto calls, even if it's good or bad. Just be on calls, hear what people's feedback is and everything. And and it's a big thing in product, like, oh, you should be talking to users and this and that. But to get them to actually jump on a call sometimes, it can be a struggle. It can be a struggle.
Maybe it needs to be part of their bonus. How many customer calls are you on, Mr. CTO?
Oh, that's a good point. I used to, if I can, I always recommend this, is to have everybody have a pretty good sizable chunk of their bonus structure be tied back to retention. Mm-hmm. Because just like the nervous system, like you were saying, I've been in rooms where people were like, that's great, I would go get on that because that customer wants it, but that's not what I'm bonused about. Like flat out.
Exactly.
Like,
they're not.
This is like a VP of development, right? Like, sorry, that's not what I'm being asked to do. Like now suddenly they're not going to be able to go to Hawaii in the wintertime because they're not going to get their bonus because their customers are all pissed off. People think a little bit differently after that. So
exactly. Yeah. I mean, revenue models and compensation models, they haven't really been looked at as much. I'll just give you an example, like, being at Citrix for 5 straight years and being there when they started, there wasn't really a big swing. It took a while. We were still doing things the old way. We were still doing very siloed work. Everyone was executing, but no one was executing in collaboration of what the other person was doing. It was all after the fact. And it's because nobody was really tied to the same end goal. And that's why we always talk about it. Like, if the customer, if the end goal is to make the customer happy, everything internally, this whole nervous system has to have the same kind of motivation, the same kind of incentive.
Yeah.
We can't have different ones. Another good example is I had the head of support on one of my team calls. I just said, hey, I want you to come on my call. I want you to talk to my team,
Yep.
because there was a lot of support,
Oh, I think it's great.
Yeah.
I always had like guest speakers all the time. This is what, yeah, absolutely.
And I went on to say, oh, by the way, did you know that my CSMs have a KPI for the amount of days they onboard a customer? And what he said was, I had no idea.
Right.
Because they weren't getting to certain things that were preventing us, our CSMs, from moving forward, like fixing something or making a configuration that, the tech couldn't do. So we had to put it into support. And that's just communication. That's part of the nervous system.
I think this nervous system is you're looking for a TED Talk. There you go. It's the nervous system.
Maybe. I don't know. I have this other idea for my TED Talk, but we'll see.
Okay. Awesome. And I was just looking at the time. I try and keep these under half an hour. So I'm looking through my notes. I think we covered a lot of it. It's funny how I always think I'm going to go into this with some super tactical thing, and it winds up always coming back to like the bigger picture, right? Like, it's like, no, Jeff, you've got to open up.
Dive down.
Yeah.
Let's see. What can we dive down into? I could, just drop an F-bomb or something like that. Whatever you want me to do.
Using Medic to. No, I'm just kidding. We don't want to get into that.
No, we talked. The only other thing that I think you and I pre-talked about was the creativity in the playbook.
Oh yeah, no, that's super important because people can turn into robots if they're just following a playbook all the time.
So I had a call with this one potential employer, I guess, and the reason for this position is because a lot of the people that reported to her were very tactical. They kind of fell into that tactical motion, and they needed someone to like shake things up, strategy, here's 3 options. Which one do you want me to execute on? Okay, great. I got it. Consider it done. A couple of things with that. One is it's coachable and it's also teachable. Okay. Because I was able to do that with my team. So maybe not everybody can do that, but when you give that kind of, when you give them that room, like a CSM, don't worry about checking the boxes in this, customer success CRM.
Right.
I need you to create a solution because that's what the customer needs. So come back to me with what you think we can do. Get the people you need, present it to me, and let's do it.
Do you think it's because people are they've got so many customers, so they're following the playbook? Like, I'm wondering, I don't have actually experience in this. Maybe you have some, like when you're a CSM for a really large named account or something like that, where you've got like, some Amazon or some huge customer like that, where you're just focusing on them. Do you think that you're a little bit more creative and not just following a playbook in that sense?
Yeah. I mean, the only reason why I'm saying that is because if you do have a customer like that, you're not just dealing with one person. I'm sure you're dealing with a host of different teams.
Yep.
So the one thing that you can probably run into is exactly what we're talking about, which means that Amazon may not be a nervous system. They may not be talking to each other. They might be working as like AWS and merchandising and, whatever else. And that can also pose a problem for a very large company like that. So if I have a CSM that says, hey, you know what, this customer needs, XYZ, and I can get this done if I just pull in this person, I'm like, do it. Don't worry about checking all the boxes and all the different tasks. I want to see that the customer is moving down the journey and that the customer is excited and happy and will continue to buy.
Yeah.
So if you can do that, then great.
That's it. That's it right there.
Yeah.
Yep. Awesome. Well, let's do this. Let's move over. Let's get off of CS. I always like to wrap up with some fun. What's the winter plans now that we're waiting for the snow to arrive? What's the big winter initiative?
The winter initiative. So my initiative is to probably go to Colorado and visit my son and daughter-in-law, probably sometime in January again. And and I don't know. I mean, I know
Don't let it fly. That's right.
Yeah, no, I mean, I have 2 out of 3 kids I have to, so the other one's in New York. I mean, that's really what I do. I mean, when I have time off, I go see my kids. And
oh, that's great.
Colorado, New York, and then my daughter's in Asheville.
Nice. Good music scene.
It's great down there.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. They live literally right in the mountains. I mean, it's
so good. I actually have not been there. It's on the list. Now that my kids are getting a little older, we can make those trips where it doesn't have to be to an amusement park and everything like that. We're not doing that anymore. Like we took them to the Grand Canyon.
You graduated from that.
Yeah, the big thing was we went to Sedona in the Grand Canyon, and but then they were like, okay, the next thing has got to be a little bit more relaxing because I'm like, let's just hike every day. So they're like, that was good. Let's not do that for a couple of years.
Yeah, if they like hiking, let me tell you, if you come to Asheville, you'll love it.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that's great. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Bern, it's been a pleasure. This was awesome. I appreciate it. I'm going to hold on because I'm going to end the recording and then we can just wrap up after that. So I'm going to post your LinkedIn profile. Any other place that you want to point people to or anything like that?
No, if anybody would like to connect, just certainly connect with me on LinkedIn. Happy to do that. And thanks so much, Jeff. Thanks so much for the opportunity.
No, thanks for chatting. I don't get to go down this road. I always have theories about it. So it's great to really talk with somebody who can bring in both sides and see how both can work well together. So awesome. So let me just stop the recording.